people just didn't get it. I was trying to emphasize slowing down and looking at things and not just reading over. And so that's why last week I wanted to get away from that a little bit. But I wanted to share, going back into Genesis with you this morning, with Noah and the flood. And there's a couple things that just really stand out here with this. It's not a story, this historical fact. But it said that Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God. And Noah became the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Then God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, and the earth is filled with violence because of them. And behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with rooms, and shall cover it inside and out with pitch. And you know how the story goes on anyway. So he did what he was told. And before I continue, I just wanted to pause and just a thought on this. And thinking, and somebody help me if I'm wrong, it was like 120 years or something that he was working on that thing? Is that? Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to remember that from memory. I Googled it and I got 3 different answers. I remembered 120 anyway. And I remember somebody in a class when I was a kid talking about how hard it would have been for Noah to be spending 120 years working on this thing and having all the people laughing at him and giving him a hard time, you know, building this ark in the middle of nowhere with no chance of rain or a flood coming. But thinking about that little Sunday school lesson, there's a lot of reality to that. And I was just comparing some of the things that we've done in the past, whether it be in a church or duck oil or the mission thing or whatever. And it seems like when something like that comes into being, there's instantly from the outside, that'll never happen, that can't work, that's nuts, that's, you know, all the negative things. And I got to thinking, it's the same thing compared to Noah, but with me or us, it's such a little tiny small piece of time. And I think how this guy stood up, not just a few people poking fingers or saying things, but to masses, day after day after day, year after year after year. And to think how hard would it have been for him to not only try to tell him, hey, you guys better get it right and save yourself before it's too late, and getting laughed at, but trying to focus on the precision that God gave him through instruction for every single thing to fit perfect. And so thinking about how God was so, it says he walked with him, he was so centered with God that God gave him the ability and the focus to build the ark and to stand up to the people to present his word and not let it penetrate. If it penetrated, man, he might have got one wrong peg or a little leaky spot in one of the boards or something, but it was absolute perfection. And another thing I wanted to point out here on that story is right over here. And it's very familiar. Now I didn't highlight my Bible this morning. Noah did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did. And it goes on, and what it's saying about the 40 days and 40 nights, flipping over to Exodus, how long were they out in that wilderness?
Same time.
Isn't that a trip? I never put those two together until I went back looking at Genesis for something else. And I thought, okay, so there's a correlation there. I got 5 more minutes. I'm going to try and say it really quick. I'm going to talk about it on the radio tonight. But what happened in the desert those 40 years? Think about the same thing with Noah. Everything got wiped out. Noah and his family had to have absolute 100% dependent faith on God, right? Mm-hmm. Not only through obedience, but also sustain them to the next level. I don't know, next door, whatever. What happened in the wilderness? God took them out there. They had to wander around till they got broke down enough to actually have the faith and the commitment to serve God, which they didn't quite make it at the end, you know that. But there's something similar there, and we can apply it in our lives, in our what we're trying to do here, Going out, there's always going to be negative. Always going to be somebody to want to tear something down, somebody else is trying to build up. People that just plain and simple don't believe. Does that mean quit? Absolutely not. Just like Noah, dude did not quit. He kept the instructions. He was obedient to him to the letter. And the same thing in the wilderness. Sometimes, I'd like to say an example, got to be brought down a little bit to wander around to really realize where the focus needs to be and the faith needs to be. I'm going to expand on that a little bit this evening, hopefully, Vic. Mike and I, well, mostly Mike, got some stuff set up, so we're going to see if we can get it on here. Do you have the remote, Mike?
It's right there on the...
Okay.
I'll stop turning my back to you in a moment.
We'll edit that part out.
Okay. Now, for quite some time, I've got this program that I've used called the Brain. And the Brain is like a file organization system, but it has this neat feature that I've always said to myself. I mean, when I say always, I'm talking for years. I've thought about how I could use this program to assist here. The problem with so many graphics is that they're hard to understand, too cluttered, so on and so forth. Well, what this thing does, and this is just a standard Apple computer, and it's connected to this TV through something called Apple TV. It's a little device that's sitting back of the TV. And what I can do, it will recenter itself for new information. So it kind of clears the board every time I want to use it, every time I change topic. So it's not so cluttered anymore. And this is, I'm going to try to use it. I also have on here, I have other programs. This is chapter 8 of Matthew. And I don't know if you can read that or not, but it may be helpful to flash that up there to avoid some of the looking up for things. So I'm going to try that as well. Now, this is just an experiment to try to help things to be recalled. I've read studies that talk about the fact that we lose a great deal of what we hear just by speaking. But if you add some visuals to it, retention is that much easier. And that's the goal of this, to try to make it easier. It's a little bit clumsy because we just kind of makeshifting here now, but we'll see how it works. Now, what I want to talk about is, in this program, this has two different programs. I just swipe it and it'll change screens for me. It's really quite handy. But 2 weeks ago, we talked about the mustard seed dime concept. And I got my little cup up here, and every day since then, I put a little dime in my cup. And I dump the dimes in. There's a vase back there now, a retired flower vase that is now the container for the mustard seed dimes. And the whole point of that concept is not the dime so much. It's the concept of mustard seed faith, because there's kind of like a gap between the Bible and ourselves, and we don't know how to step across that gap and to grab onto some of these things that are in the scriptures. And the mustard seed dimes is just a way of doing that, and it's for the purpose of helping, well, we used to call them just missions, but now we call it other things like the duck oil and stuff like that. And actually the Duck Oil Ministries has two components now. It's got a local homeless component, and it's got an international component, which is, that sounds kind of like we're puffing it up, but we're really not. It does. As strange as it seems, this little group that we're in. So last week, I added to the mustard seed faith concept by identifying 5 goals. And they're basically shirts, shoes, gift bags, dollars, and tracts, Bible tracts. And I said our goal should be 1,000 shirts, 1,000 pair of shoes, 1,000 gift bags, $1,000 to help the workers in the Philippines, because these people are over there, they don't have nearly as much as we do, and it just puts some gas in their car, help them. They buy banners, they buy T-shirts, they ought to be helped buying their own meals when they go someplace, at least, if possible. And just some money to put in to make their work that they're volunteering to do that much easier, and 10,000 gospel tracts. The tracts I recommend, and Rich agrees with this, the chick tracts. They're easily the most effective. They're kind of in-your-face gospel, but what the heck, You've got one shot, you might as well be in somebody's face with talking to them. And so we talked about that last week. We also talked about Christian theory versus Christian faith. And what I tried to help us to see, or help me to see as well, is that we all believe that in theory, God can use this little group to put 1,000 pairs of shoes on the poor kids, 1,000 shirts on their backs, give them 1,000 gift bags, put $1,000 in the workers' hands, and put 10,000 tracts on the streets of the Philippines. And that's where we are. It's a street ministry. These are not the rich people. These are the poor people, the outcasts, the kids nobody wants, and their parents. And we all believe in theory that God can do that. But the mustard seed dime concept is a way of stepping from theory to an act of faith. Now, this mustard seed dime concept comes from the Lord Jesus, who said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Now, that wasn't my idea, that was his idea. What he's trying to communicate in that brilliant illustration is that God doesn't require a lot to work with. He doesn't need a big pile of stuff that he can use. He can use a little bit, and he'll work with it and turn the little bit into something that we would never have seen without contributing to that little bit. That's what it's all about. It's not about anything less than that. It's not about a lot of things. And the 1,000 this and 1,000 that and 1,000 the other, that comes from Matthew 8:13. And that's where we have the story of the centurion who came to the Lord Jesus and said, my servant's sick, I need some help, so on and so forth. And the last portion of that is the Lord Jesus says, it'll be done for you as you have believed. That's what he said. And I thought to myself, well, if we're going to have faith, we got to have some goal that we can measure it by, something that we can say whether we're making progress towards it or not. And so I just picked those out of the air. I think that they'll be helpful to us. Now, this week, I want to use this concept. Mustard seed faith is what we're talking about. And as I've taught many times, mustard seed faith, or any faith, there's 4 levels of faith. And I want to talk about the different ways, the different levels and how it works in terms of the mustard seed thing. Now the 4 levels are apistos, this right here, number 1. Number 2 is, that means the decision not to believe. The letter A in front of a Greek word is the negative. It's like putting a negative in front of a number. Oligopistos is a word coined by the Lord Jesus, and that is "Oh, you of little faith." That's, he said it 5 times in the scriptures, and it's always that word. Never shows up in ancient literature before then. And it means you believe, but you can't. Doesn't take you anywhere. It just doesn't seem to be working. Elpis, this one right here. That's the translation. That's translated hope, and that talks about the positive mental attitude that a person develops as they move down this faith path, because you do develop a positive mental attitude. And the Bible talks a lot about hope. And pistis is the word where we get, which is usually translated faith in the English. It's the Greek word pistis. Now, what I want to do this morning is talk about the ways in which we practice the decision not to believe. And I want to cover all 4 of them. I think we have enough time. Yeah, we do, actually. The ways in which we believe, we refuse to believe. We tell ourselves these things. Number 1, it won't work. Yeah. And I can easily see somebody saying, you punks, who do you think you are, trying to send all this stuff to those poor people. I mean, it won't work. You're nobody. Dimes are nothing. You can't buy a cup of coffee with a dime. It won't work. Well, that's the decision not to believe. It's really what it is. The second thing that people say is, I always forget. And how many have forgot to put their little sticker on their little cup and forgot to put the dimes in it? I put this where I see it every day, and every day I put a dime in it. I put my first 14 dimes in that retired flower vase back there today. And that's what it's for. It's that, it says, got a little sign on it, for your mustard seed dimes. And Richard, I think, have got some ideas to put some flower vases out there in the community, which is a great idea. And I support it wholeheartedly. But I forget. It's a way of saying I don't believe. You know. Another thing that people say is it's not my problem. Well, it's not my problem. I don't live in the Philippines. I've got my own problems. What do I want to help those people? That's a way of saying I don't believe that God wants to use me to help these poor people over there. Another one that people say is I gave it the office. Well, that's true. You know, somebody says, well, I put my money in the offering plate. Quit bugging me. You know, I've already given you something. What do you want? Blood? Well, okay, your call. If you don't believe that you want to be a part of that, if you don't have the faith to believe that that's a good idea, that's your call. But I tell you what, as I've said from the beginning, these are not common dimes. These are mustard seed dimes. They're only a dime, but they're specifically intended to plant something in our lives that wouldn't be there otherwise. It's to provide some materials for God to use. That's exactly what it is. And that's the decision not to believe. Oligo pistos is where you believe, but you think, well, that's a good idea. I kind of like that idea. But you know, it's too hard. Well, you wouldn't think people say it's too hard to put a dime in there, but some people might. They say, you know, I don't have money to throw into a stupid cup for people I don't even know. That's really too hard to do, or it's too much money. I don't have any extra to share with people, or it's too much trouble, or it's too stupid. I mean, it's the dumbest thing I ever heard, trying to turn dimes into shoes. And gift bags for kids who live on the streets of the Philippines. Or what's the point? Now, this one I threw in specifically for Graham. Graham is our resident cynic in our home. He's always the you know what a cynic is. Well, talk to Graham, and he'll explain to you what a cynic is. Now, what Graham would, and I'm not sure he hasn't said this, but I know how he thinks. He would say, well, okay, so you help 25 kids in the Philippines. There's 25 million others that you're not helping. What's the point of helping the 25?
The beginning.
And that sounds like an intelligent response, but it's not. And let me tell you how I approach that
The beginning?
in our little family.
Yes,
Rich asked Lynn to go. I said to Lynn, Lynn's my wife. People who don't know. Asked Lynn to go purchase something for the trailer for the homeless ministry, and Lynn said in her own sweet way, "Well, what's the use?" What she meant was, you get them a sleeping bag, and if it rains out, they're just going to throw it away because you can't dry out a cotton sleeping bag. You can't. They don't have ways to dry out clothes. They don't have any of those things. And my response to her was this: that's true. You give a shirt that's going to be thrown away because they just have no way of, a homeless person has no way of washing the shirt or drying the shirt or making it clean again, so they just dump it. I get that. But the thing is, I said, what if it was our kids? What if it was Graham and Connor or Sarah or our cousins or our nephews out there on the street? Would you rather that somebody gave them a warm sleeping bag that they could only use for a week than they didn't give them anything at all?
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, that's how I see it. That's the use. And besides, this whole thing is built on mustard seed dimes. We have no idea what a pair of shoes or a shirt or a gift bag or a gospel tract means to a kid on the streets of the Philippines. We have no idea. We have no idea what Rich's his big trailer driving up and saying, "Here, you want some coffee? You want some donuts?" That sort of thing. What that means to people who are out in this last week or so. Man, what lousy weather to be homeless. I feel sorry for these folks.
And the room's
But
closed.
we have no idea what that means. And what it means, and it is called a Project Hope. And what it might do, we would hope it would do, is to help somebody to think, well, maybe there is some hope. Maybe there is something that can be done. Maybe I can get out of this rut. And let me tell you something about giving to the poor locally. We say, and correctly so, they're just going to need to spend on drugs. Yeah, you might. I don't give money for that reason. When I give things, we give gift certificates for McDonald's. They have to buy food, or something like that, where I know that money will be used wisely. But I guess that's not the point. The fact that they're making bad decisions and they're living in a bad way. The point is, here, it's like the old gospel lighthouses. We don't have them much anymore, but there's an famous old lighthouse gospel mission in I forget where it is. It's Chicago. It's Chicago Mission, and they had never mind. That's old history. But they had this sign. So Jesus is the light of the world, and I don't know what it means to you, but it means to many people who are on the street. I can go there, and I may not believe in Jesus, but I can maybe get a shower. I can maybe get a place to sleep. I can maybe get a square meal, and sure, I want to go back out and be done. But that's my answer to the question, what's the point? Yeah, you're right. What's the point? The point is,
Yes, sir.
we do what we can. And that's all the point it is. The third level of faith is elders, or hope. And when you begin to put your dimes in, and this is a serious result. This will absolutely happen. You put your dimes in here, and you begin to think, well, you know, I'm hoping this is going to do some good. I don't know how or what, but I hope it's good. I can try. I got a dime. In fact, I can do 2 dimes some days. I feel good about this. A lot of people don't feel good about themselves. But it's an odd thing how reaching out and doing something to help other people makes you feel good about yourself and maybe a little more optimistic. Your steps are a little lighter. You're a little more optimistic. You could say, tonight with my 14 dimes that I just put in that little thing, I thought to myself, you know, that's probably almost a pair of shoes. I don't know how much it costs for shoes in the Philippines, but it probably is. It's probably a t-shirt. And with other people putting their dimes in there, I know that's good for a pair of shoes. Making progress. You know, these are mustard seed dimes. God just needs something to work with. That's what he says. You have faith the size of a mustard seed. Give me something to work with. And we can do something about that mountain. And then the fourth thing, pistos, faith. So I wanted to, this is where I'm going to need the book, Matthew 8. I'm just going to leave that screen on for now. Matthew 8. There's 5 qualities and faith, level 4 faith, that I wanted to bring out. Boldness, planning, patience, problems, and cost. And they are right here. Boldness. Let's start with that one. Here's my clumsiness. I'm still learning how to make use of this. Come on. Boldness. And this is the leper of Matthew 8, 1 to 14. We talked about that story. Level 4 faith has boldness. That leper, that useless man who said to himself, of all the people who wanted to throw him away, you know, if he touches me, I believe I can get well. It took a lot of boldness, a lot of courage for him to walk through that town, walk through that crowd, every step saying, unclean, unclean, and the people withdrawing from him, and he probably smelled bad. Clothes were probably dirty. No one gave him a hug that day. They didn't get close to him. He had the boldness to take a step. And that's what faith does. I mean, it doesn't sound very bold, you know, throw a dime in here. Who knows? Maybe you'll throw 3 dimes in there tomorrow. I don't know. Second thing is planning. That's a centurion. This is a little harder to read because I have formatted it. Matthew 8, 5 to 13. Now, the centurion was a fellow who had no right to expect God to do anything for him. He wasn't a Jew. He was not a particularly religious man in the sense that the Jews were. But he made a plan. He said, you know, I've got this need here, and I've got some faith that this man can help me. Now, how do I take my faith and my need to him when there's no road for me to him? He's a Jewish leader, a rabbi, a holy man. I'm not. How do I get over there? So he made a plan, and he sent some elders ahead to pave the way and to build a bridge for him. The elders said, you know, you need to help this guy. He's been helping us. He's been doing good things for us. Give him some thought. And so when the man came to the Lord Jesus, Jesus was already mentally aware of what was going to happen, and he had thought it out. Then the man asked for what he asked for, and he had planned it out. He said, you know, I realized that Jesus got to operate with a system of authority. He doesn't need to show up to my house. He doesn't need to do anything particular. He just has to say the word, because words have authority. And so he had planning to exercise his faith. The next one is patience. And this is Peter's mother-in-law. Matthew 8:14-17. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the women that have been in my world. I am a blue-collar guy. That means that my family were working people. They went to jobs, and they got paid hourly wages. And the women that have been married, that we married in our family for years, for decades, blue-collar women. And I think of my wife, I think of my mother, my mother-in-law, and these are people who are all the time looking out for other people. There's no hostess, or there are few hostesses as good as Lynn is, as thoughtful, and as preparing ahead for her guests. You know, if she knows they're coming, she's going to do something that she wouldn't have done otherwise. Her mother was the same way. Her mother, in the other generation, they were working mothers, true, but she didn't go to work until the kids were in high school. But she worked in the home. And her home was a nice home. It was a clean home. It wasn't a fancy home. But I never saw Lynn's mother idle, ever. And her grandmother was the same way. She was not ever idle. My mother was the same way. You know, she didn't have anybody to cook for, but her kitchen was still spotless. Spotless. Things had to be exactly so, or she was troubled by that. She was a working woman. We went to an anniversary of Lynn's grandparents in Caldwell, Idaho, many years ago. And relatives came they're from, you have to say it right, Missouri. They're not from Missouri, they're from Missouri. And some of them came, is that right, Lynn, Missouri? And I remember some of the aunts and cousins, these were the young women, young married women, and the people sat around and talked about the ladies who were doing the work, and they would say things like, boy, that, and there's one named Hazel there. I never knew a Hazel before. She said Heisel. That's what she called herself, Heisel. But Hazel kept busy. She worked, and I heard probably 5 times, boy, that Hazel's a worker, you know. And she was a little older than Lynn. Now, of course, Lynn was in there with her sleeves rolled up as well, and her mother had her sleeves rolled up. But I see that in this verse here, I see Peter's mother-in-law as the same kind of woman. She's the one who, set the table, washed the dishes, did all the quiet work that made the household operate. Her son-in-law was a fisherman. Well, that's a dirty job, you know, fish scales and all the things that go with it. And the mother-in-law was sick. She couldn't get up to do what she needed to do. This is Matthew 8:14. It says, when Jesus came into Peter's home, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her. And she got up and waited on him. It's just those 2 verses. As soon as she didn't say anything, she didn't say, go talk to Jesus. I'd like to get over this. That's not her style. She didn't go ask for help. She couldn't work, so she just stayed out of sight. And Jesus somehow recognized that. And as soon as the woman was better, she got up and went back to work, helping the people there. Now that's the kind of women that have been in my world. My mother, my mother-in-law, my wife, and I'm sure many of the other women here, same story. Women who get up and go to work. But she had patience, and that's what I like about this woman. You know what? We don't think of her sick, but she's just got 2 verses in the Bible. She was sick. She got up and went to work when she got better. 2 verses. But she had patience. She laid there patiently. She didn't make a big deal about it. She couldn't do what she liked to do, which was, make sure that the food was properly prepared and the guests were taken care of and all those sorts of things. But because she was sick, but she just lay there patiently, and Jesus took his own initiative. Very rare in the Gospels. He usually waited until somebody approached him. But this is the one situation where he took the initiative. And he stood up and he made sure that woman was able to get back on her feet. But she had the patience to sit there and with the patience of faith. The scribe, Matthew 8, 18 to 20. And this is an interesting man. You've got to realize that Jesus is what we call today a rock star. Every place he went, there were hundreds, maybe thousands of people flocking around him. And it was an exciting time. He had enormous power to heal people, and he gave it freely. But this scribe says, I want to. I wish I could remember the movie that I'm getting this from. He said, I want some of that. I'd like to be part of this group. I mean, they're happening. They're exciting. So he said, okay, Jesus, I'm going to go with you. I'm your man here. And Jesus said, teacher, I'll follow you wherever you go. Jesus said to him, the foxes have holes, the air has the air. The foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests. But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. What he's saying is this, you want to have faith, you want to follow me, there's going to be problems. It's not all great times and great scenes and easy days and great crowds and rah-rah. He said, I wander from place to place. I don't have a place to stay. It's a tough life. He walked where he went, and he walked fast, too. He moved quickly. So the level 4 faith, has I did switch, did I? Has problems. Solves problems. And then the last one to look at today. Is cost. And that's in the next one. Jesus sees a man that he'd like to have join in his quest. And the man is drawn to what's going on. And he's already a disciple, he's following, he's listening, he's believing. And he says to Jesus, Lord, I'd love to go with you, but there's just some things I've got to take care of. And let me first go and bury my father. But Jesus said to him, follow me and allow the dead to bury their own dead. This is not the story of a man waiting to finish the funeral. Father was, and I'm not getting this from other Bible pages because I don't know, but this is what I've been told. It would make sense to me that the father was still living. What he's saying is, my parents are old. Somebody's got to be there to help them. I want to wait till that job is done before I can take on the new job. And Jesus said, there's a cost to following me. And that may be the cost you have to pay, to let somebody else take care of your parents and follow me. So those are the issues of pistos, for faith. He saw the problems. That was a scribe. Made plans. That was a centurion. Had patience. That was Peter's mother-in-law. 2 verses in the Bible. Remarkable. Cost. take tough choices and boldness. The leper stepped up and said, heal me. So that's level 4 faith. That's, you know, this is much more. 4 levels of faith. That's this little cup. How you handle this stupid little cup that you've got, or whatever you've got in your own home, whatever you've done, or you don't have it, is your level of faith. It's your choice, your call. But I'm encouraging you to understand that it may be something that's good for you, not only good for people. And that's all I want to share. Mitch?